Hello.
Morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not enjoying the grey skies, but
Yeah, well,
summer
look,
will come back, won't it? That
look at
wasn't
the
just it at
sky.
the weekend. Come on, tell me.
No, I'm pretty certain that was summer for 2022. We're now into winter, and through until spring next year. But yeah, it's gone. I mean, you can see it's pitch black here. I've got lights on everywhere. And it's kind of
Lights from all angles.
Armageddon outside. Grey skies everywhere. I think today's the worst day. Snow. Pack
Is
the
it?
kids up. He's like, "Why have you not got coats on? Well, it's been warm." No,
Ah.
you need a coat today. It's going to be snowy. But yeah, I think we got snow later. But enough of that.
Oh.
Enough about the weather.
Yeah, I know. But it does make such a difference, doesn't it? At the weekend, we were just sitting outside and it was just glorious, and everybody was just coming and talking to us and being normal and enjoying time with each other, which is kind of what happens when we're at work and have a nice time as well, isn't it?
It is. It's that kind of, find the best place you can to have a nice experience.
Yeah,
Whether it
exactly.
be a
Create that
fun
environment.
one, a joyful one, a work one, or whatever. But yeah, like the best days at school were when you got to work outside. We can go
Yeah,
sit in, we can go sit on the field
fun.
and work.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't do that at work, do we? Go work outside. Crazy. Yes, I do enjoy taking a laptop and sitting in the garden every now and
Yeah.
then. In the shade, obviously, with sun
Yes.
factor on. But anyway, enough of our working patterns.
We digress.
It's our weekly team huddle. Welcome to our weekly team huddle. What are we talking about this week?
Truth. How
Truth.
to encourage truth telling in ourselves with our teams. Because it can be quite tricky, can't it?
It can, but not just at work. It seems to be all over the place at the moment. But yeah, specifically at work and with your team, in terms of what sort of things. What's stopping us being honest at work? Why are we being dishonest at work with ourselves, with others? How do we shift that environment? If we notice it, how do we actually practically, safely start to shift it? And I know this sort of you're brilliant at sort of ways of introducing this into language, into our thinking, but also recognizing some of the questions I get are things like, well, can you be too honest? And stuff like that. So hopefully we'll try and cover all of those in useful ways that make you think, but also maybe some practical stuff to take away as well.
Absolutely.
Where do you want to start?
So should we just talk about the language? Because there was a couple of things that popped up in my mind as soon as we started talking around this. And it's those kind of sentences like, can I be honest with you? Let's be honest. And let's have a chat. That I know when I've been on the receiving end of those in the past in a kind of working environment, my heart has just sunk, and you just know what's coming, don't you? So either you kind of go into retreat, this is one of the normal things that people go into, or a series of defensive mode. It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. No, I'm not having any of this. It's nothing to do with me. Blame. So there's certain things that we can do with our language to soften that first conversation, isn't there? And I think you said it earlier when we were speaking, it's just like, well, we talk about being brutally honest. Well, brutal is a really harsh word, isn't it? and actually, yes, sometimes the truth does hurt. And also another thing that popped into my head was a truth bomb. Well, if you tell the truth, does that mean, that everything's going to explode and everything's going to be destroyed and, disaster? It doesn't. It doesn't have to be like that. And it's what we do as a result and behave and act after that, and then pick up the pieces in order to put it back together and understand it. That's the important part. But also think about how you can change your language to start those conversations off, to not put somebody in that retreat or that defense mode. Have you got any ideas as to what might be a bit more helpful around that?
I think firstly, respecting the context of where you're delivering stuff. So, you talk there about brutally honest, and there's usually, in my experience, that's used to defend a certain type of behavior, not the intent. The intent of being honest about something is fine. It's actually to justify being rude or not thinking about the implication of what I'm about to say. That doesn't mean you have to not say it. But I think, there's a phrase I use, kind candor, which is kind of, you can still be honest. You can be kind about it. Don't be rude about it. Don't be brutal about it. And I'm with you on that. And there is something for me in the word kind and adopting that. Okay, in this in every exchange where I'm honest, instead of being brutally honest or channeling it as it is, I'm going to be kind. That doesn't mean you soften it. That doesn't mean you you temper it unless you think that's and that's the right thing to do. It means you're still honest. It means you're respectful of how and where and when this might be received. I remember this isn't a team example, but I remember you coming to me a few weeks ago and saying I'd written on a post for LinkedIn. I'd written, "I'm dead excited." I'd used that language, and you came to me, and you didn't come. You just pointed out the word "dead." You know, in that context, there's connotations exactly as you just said. It brings out a certain connotation, but you didn't come in and say, "Oh, that word. I'm not sure about that word." What you know, you didn't come in softly. You know, trying to almost embarrass about raising it. But at the same time, you didn't come in, "That's a crap word. Don't use that word. Use a better word than that." You didn't come in that. You came in with, "Oh, Colin, that word you've used can have connotations. This is how I take it. This is how I think it. What do you think about that?" You came in with the honesty, with the kindness, with the honesty had a point, and you're more likely to get the point or the result you want if you use kindness. Now, I don't mean manipulation. I don't mean, well, you know, I'll try and, you know, how do I best get this if I appeal to them, whatever. You do what you find respectful, what you find kind. So yeah, kind is a way. If you can just embody kindness through all these things.
And I think what we've got to remember is that my truth is different to your truth. And your truth is different to somebody else's truth and everybody else around you, because it's your version of reality. And it's our job, I think, especially in teams and when we're leading teams, is to explore that and to see what people are thinking, because they will have been brought up differently. They will have had different jobs. They will have different beliefs in, you know, themselves and their self-esteem and where they are at in their lives and what's going on at home. And they, as a result of that, will be thinking in a very different way. So it's so important, isn't it, to put our judgment aside, to go, well, and actually some, you know, when we receive a truth, sometimes it can trigger us into, you know, a past moment in our lives which hasn't made us feel good. And also predict that this conversation might go a certain way, which maybe in the past might not have done. So it's so important to reserve that judgment, be aware of it, you know, have a few breaths around it and not kind of predict what's going to happen, because I'm not a mind reader. You're not a mind reader. I didn't know how you were going to take that, but I wanted to explore it. And you might have said, actually, I think it's absolutely right. You know, I like that word. And for me, that's, you know, it feels fitting. Fine. We've had a conversation about it. It didn't need to necessarily have a solution, did it? It's just, I just wanted to know how you felt about it. And I think in every kind of conversation we have within our businesses, yes, in our one-to-one, but also in our emails and our memos and, you know, our Slack channels or whatever, it's about doing that rather than saying, this is the truth, this is it, this is the hard line. And I've even said hard line, you know, why can't there be a soft line? It's not black and white, because everybody is different.
I think honesty, if you're going to start being more honest, if you recognize it's something that you want to be more of, or this is missing in what you're doing, it has to appear in everything you do. You can't just go, "Oh, I've been honest with you, now I'm going to walk away." You kind of, okay, you want to encourage, okay, so what was, you know, based on what I've just said, what are you thinking? Or listen, actually, I noticed when we had that chat earlier, I noticed, you know, some frowns and some confusion. Any thoughts you've got for me in terms of what I said, how that was delivered? You know, be honest about your honesty. Maybe you're saying, I'm not sure I said that right. Can you, you know, what's your thoughts? Be honest about whether you don't know, whether, you know, what you know, but also what you don't know.
Exactly. And I think as a leader, it's important, you know, to have hands up and say, you know, I don't know all the answers. I'm not a robot. I can't process everything. I don't know the answers. And I'd like you to help me understand, is a really, you know, I know you hate the word, but empowering statement at any point in any kind of conversation. It's like, I'm not superhuman. I am a human. I have feelings. I don't understand what's going on and I don't have all the answers. And I think that is, you know, a really, really great way to kind of start a conversation. And also, you can feel when the truth isn't being told, can't you? You can just feel it in the atmosphere, and you can tell, like you just said, if somebody's talking to you face to face, or if you're in a group environment, you can tell when the truth isn't unless you're a very good actor. And actually I did a drama class last night, and we kind of had to tell 2 truths and 1 lie, and we had to tell if the other person was, which one was the lie. And there were obviously some really good actors there, so you couldn't tell. But regardless of that, you can tell, when you can just feel it, you can sense it, and sometimes you can't pinpoint it, but you can feel it, and then that has connotations to how you feel with it, which then has an effect on how you behave and what the outcome is for you and your team, and all the conversations that you have with your clients, with your partners, with your board, with whoever. So it's so important. I think I heard something the other day that if something's on your mind, and this is, at work, family, friends, and it's still on your mind 48 hours later, you've got to say something. And sometimes we don't know how to say it, and that's fine. But not saying something is even more damaging than saying something, isn't it? Because those awkward moments are always going to be there. So why not deal with them now, or at a time that's suitable, or later, rather than later, because they're always going to be there. And yeah, it might be uncomfortable, but you've got to be truthful with yourself and then have that conversation from there on, because it's always going to be there.
That being truthful with yourself, I think, is key to this kind of honesty at work. It's easy to just pigeonhole it as lying about stuff, or hiding stuff, or being being manipulative with the truth, all those kind of things. Where actually there is an element of it which is about recognizing how you're talking to yourself, what you're not talking to yourself about. What are you ignoring? Ignoring things, which is what you describe, is a form of dishonesty.
Yeah.
And actually, you don't always have to necessarily talk about it, but you ignoring it and not deciding to. So ignoring by default because this is just how it is here, or if I say something, and you kind of subconscious trains yourself to just do that by default. So taking a moment to go, actually, I've noticed I'm not going back about what was said, and it's made me feel a bit weird. Am I okay with that? Shall I do something about that? It's okay to say, no, I'm not going to do anything about it. I've decided not to, for whatever reason, but making a choice about it. That's the honest bit. I'm making an honest choice to not do something about it, rather than just carrying on because that's being dishonest.
And I think, a great strength in teams is to have people who think the same, but equally, and I think most importantly, actually, is to have people who think differently, so that you can have that challenge. And it's what you put on your post this morning, isn't it? Is to have a challenge, but know that you're going to come out of it in a better, more rounded, educated perspective after having that challenge, rather than a conflict that's just going to, like I said before, that truth bomb, an explosion, everybody falls to pieces because everybody's resilience is, at zero. So it's about that really. And, also understanding that, if members of your team are also maybe a little bit, not willing to talk, let's say, okay, I'm not going to beat around the bush. There's some narcissistic leaders out there, aren't they? And maybe telling the truth to those kind of people is not going to go down well. And it's about learning how to talk somebody's language that can help you help them understand the situation in a much more helpful way, that you can decide, like you said a minute ago, about what to do about it. Okay, great. Can we make this project go forward? Or actually, I need to remove myself from the project in this team because it's not helpful for me. It's not helpful for everybody else. It's not working, and I need to look elsewhere. It's about making that choice, isn't it, as to what you do with the information.
It's a good point. There are risks with being honest. And a lot of it's contextual, depending on the environment, the work, the team, the organization, the people you work with. The far end of the scale, the biggest risk is, there are psychopaths in work. They exist in life. They will exist in work. And I suspect many of us have stories or experiences of at least coming in, brushing up against those people, if not working directly for them. I know I've got my share of them. There are people that will manipulate the truth, that will hide the truth for their own ends, that will all those kind of things, that will use emotion, will use logic to belittle, and will use personality and charisma to do that. You've got to decide. There's risks driving a car. There are risks driving a car. Do we still do it? We absolutely do. Does that mean we ignore everybody else that's on the road? No, we take manage risk. We look at what's going on. We listen to the sounds of traffic. We look at what's going on. We pay attention to things and we make decisions. We listen, we extrapolate. We're curious about different things when new rules come in, all that kind of stuff. We give people space when they need it on the road. When, you know, we've seen that person who's, they're breaking a bit savagely. Oh, just back off a bit more. We respond to things. But if we start thinking that everybody on the road is out to crash into us, very soon we'll stop driving at all. That doesn't mean there isn't somebody out there that's not going to take their eyes off the road or even intentionally have a moment of road rage, the psychopath equivalent. But actually, you can't let that stop you driving the road. You can adapt your behavior a bit, but don't let it stop you getting in the car. And it's the same with work. If there is somebody like that, then, to be blunt, particularly with the definition of a psychopath, the chances are you're not going to change them.
No.
You've got to decide whether you can change enough of the environment, or other people are willing to change enough of the environment, be honest enough that that person is too uncomfortable for them to stay, or it's too uncomfortable for you to stay, and do something about it. But ultimately, don't sacrifice your honesty, your well-being, your respect for them, because that's what you're doing. If you're choosing to be dishonest because of the consequences of being honest, you're not doing yourself any favors.
That's it. And this comes down to our value system, and a value we describe in NLP as something that's really important to us in the way that we live our lives. So if, you know, one of your values is being truthful, but the people that you're working with are not being truthful, that's going to have a conflict. So you're going to go into an environment every day, whether or not you're sitting, you know, in an office or at your desk, wherever you are, and pretending to be somebody you're not. So, and we all know what that feels like after a period of time. You know, our soul is sucked dry, isn't it? And then all of a sudden we're kind of turning up at work and tapping away the keys on the keyboard, and we're not actually there. So not great for us. You know, our soul is depleted. We feel absolutely crap, and we're not engaged in our teams. And then they're wondering what's going on.
So how do we turn that around? How do we take an environment where honesty isn't where we'd want it to be, where we want to be? We've noticed that. How do we make somewhere? How do we become more honest somewhere where honesty has not really been valued before?
So from a member of the team or a leader, well, I mean, either or, because obviously we're kind of all in for people having these same kind of skills. I think it's really just bringing, you know, first step, bringing the self-awareness of what's actually going on. And then for me, what I would do is, you know, talk to somebody else whose opinion I really respected, but also somebody who thinks differently, just so I can get a, you know, bit of a clear understanding of what's going on, maybe a, you know, good close friend or something, and then have a conversation and raise it, and make it a point of in the next meeting, or with somebody, you know, who kind of feel is going to be on your side anyway, and just embrace it and say, look, this is going on at the moment. And use the words I a lot. I feel this, I feel that, rather than blaming the situation on everybody else and everything else being out of your control, especially if it's a project or the way that somebody's treating you. It's like, well, this person's always this person's always that. It kind of makes you come across as a bit of a victim. And yes, sometimes that does happen, but the moment that we bring into our emotions into it, nobody can take that away from us as to how we feel about a situation, and it becomes very much in our control. And then, you know, have that exploration conversation with that person. Not necessarily take it straight to HR, because then that's, you know, an escalation of a thing that you might be able to resolve instantly or within, you know, a few hours or a couple of days, rather than going up the chain and going, you know, exploding it into something that it might not actually be. What about you? What would you suggest?
I think that first point, exactly those points, and working through them in that order is really important in terms of, so the self-awareness bit. What is it that's not working? What is it that's stopping you being honest? What is it that's making you feel like being honest isn't the best way to deal with it? You mentioned projects in there. I mean, the number of times I've worked with teams where, what's going on? You know, there's something going on, and kind of when you kind of get to the cause of it, it's like, well, you know, we all know this project is going to not hit the deadline. It's a classic. We're not going to hit the deadline. Okay, well, why is nobody saying that? Well, because there's no point, because the deadline was decided without us. And that's usually a good example of where they're not displaying honesty, but actually the honesty wasn't there in the first place as well. There was no engagement of the team or no seeking of opinions. And so kind of, acknowledging, like you said, I feel like me being honest about the deadline, there's no point to it because the decision's already been made.
Yeah.
Identifying what it is, something, there might be lots of things, but identify something specific within yourself that's causing you, well, I'm not being honest because I feel like there's no point because every project I've worked on, somebody else decides when it's going to be done. Not the people who know when it's going to be done, but somebody else. So actually identifying that, being aware enough to find some point, because otherwise, how many times we've gone onto a project, it's somewhere different, or a different team, or a different project, or a different initiative. This will be different. Don't know where it needs to be different. It won't be different. The chances are project B will look just like project A. You've got to understand what it was about project A, or initiative A, or team A, or topic A, or piece of work A, or sprint A, or deliverable A, or whatever it was that you want to be different, and stating, this is how I felt, this is how I want to feel. I want to
what can we do about
contribute this? I want to contribute to how long this will take. The estimate or the guess.
Because that's the surefire way to reach disconnection, isn't it? Is having a conversation. Things are going to be different. Yes, they really will. Things will be different next time. And then lo and behold, when it all comes around again, the action remains the same. And after a while, that repeated action of things being the same doesn't end well. We know that leads to presenteeism, disconnection, disenfranchised, you name it, all those kind of words where we just turn up to work and don't care. Basically, let's get down to the bottom of it. So we don't want that, and how do leaders do that? How do they do things differently? Well, they behave differently, and they have to learn different ways of doing things, and they have to model that behavior, however difficult it is for them. They have to learn, and it is a skill. And the first few times it's going to be pretty uncomfortable because they've probably never done it before, and it's a real stretch of their comfort zones. And they're going to like, oh, I'm not, I might be seen a failure, I might be seen weak. I've got to be strong and I've got to be in control. But actually, we all know that that's completely unrealistic. And there's the conditions there that they've been placing on themselves that are, a surefire way to reach overwhelm and burnout for them and for everybody else. So, those kind of different points of action are the things that build trust, that build connection, that create that team spirit.
Absolutely. I think as a leader, you've got to decide to identify, to find a point of disconnection. Not everything, but find a point of disconnection, something that's not working. You can use feedback from your team, you can use curiosity to find it, you can make a decision if you need to. I generally suggest you find something that the team want to improve, and then you say, let's practice being more open about this particular area. Let's practice being more open about deadlines. Let's practice that conversation. Or deadlines isn't perhaps particularly the way most teams work these days. Let's be more open about estimates because you're not giving me, I feel like I don't understand your estimates. You don't feel like it's worth telling me because I won't list it. Whatever is going on, just open that up. Just open that up at a specific area of disconnection and create a new space to practice that. Don't practice that in the middle of the sprint meeting with all the stakeholders and the product owner and the customers and the clients and the testers, and have that discussion there. So look, as a team, why don't we carve out 15 minutes on Friday? 30 minutes to just look at this. And there's a method, getting a bit into practical stuff, but I love the triad communication method for this sort of stuff, where you're feeling a little bit kind of unsafe, or not sure how to do it, or just concerned about things. Just having that kind of, okay, so we're talking about estimates. Each, all 4 of us or 5 of us, 10 of us in the team will go around and tell us what our challenge is with estimates, whether it's a specific one with a specific estimate or whatever. You tell us, Tasha, what your challenge is. We will listen. Then after, we won't ask, at that point, you tell us what it is. Then we will discuss, the rest of the team will discuss that. We'll offer any insights, any thoughts without you as part of the discussion. So we're not talking to you. We're not having a go at you. We're not making it about you. We're making it about your challenge. then you, Tasha, can what did you take from that discussion? Then you can ask us any questions. You can dig into it. You can tell us what you took from that discussion, what's useful for you. That encourages, if you want to be really powerful, if there is something, you can, Tasha, you can turn around and face the wall.
Yeah.
Then it almost takes that personal. It's a little bit clunky. For teams that are feeling a little bit, I don't want to say this, but they're there.
Yes.
Turn around and face the wall. Zoom is brilliant for that, because you can almost turn the camera off. Say, right, I'm going to turn my camera off. You talk about my challenge.
That's it.
I'll listen to what you're saying.
Yeah.
It starts to encourage those skills of honesty, which is state something, discuss it, listen, share what you heard.
But isn't it funny how when someone tells the truth and then everybody else jumps on the bandwagon, it's like, I felt like that, and it only takes one person to the floodgates then opening. So sometimes we have to be that person, even when we feel like it's not our job role to do that. But sometimes that could be the real catalyst. And, there are people out there who've got a little bit more confidence than others. But that little bit of confidence will inspire other people to do the same in other situations, at home as well, because, people coming into a team, they've got other things going on at home. And let's not just talk about truth at work. It's truth about what's actually going on in our home lives, because we can't help but bring that to work as well. And I think the best teams that I've always worked with is that, we've had a general understanding of what actually goes on in people's lives behind closed doors, so that you can, bring compassion in, bring empathy in, have a chat about stuff, and not necessarily just support people, but understand and share their kind of successes as well. It's not about people's struggles, but it's about being interested in what other people do, in their hobbies and their private lives as well. That's the fun stuff, because you're thinking back to the jobs that I've loved, it's always been about the people. It's never been about the actual jobs. It's about the people that I've worked with and who've shared those experiences with. That's what's made it.
I know that to a large extent we want to believe some lies. Geeky quote time. There's a quote in June. Some lies are easier to believe than the truth.
Yeah.
And that's true at work. It's true at home. And just recognizing that. Quite often, a lot of clients or a lot of we work with will say, "It's not too bad." Now that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is it's not good.
Yeah.
If it's not too bad, that also means it's not good. So we can hide behind the kind of dishonesty of it's not too bad, but there comes a point where you've got to decide, do I want it to be good? Work context, home context, hobby context, whatever context. And I think, going back to your language, it's interesting that we tend to focus on the negatives and we tend to defend them and justify them. Well, all teams are like this, or all projects have their stressful times. It's just it always seems to be all the time, or whatever. We defend the negative, flip that, and we defend almost the negative because we don't want to look at the truth. And the truth is, this is the 17th project I've worked on. That everything's stressful and pressured. What's going on? Or my relationship at home isn't what I want it to be. What's going on, or whatever it is. And we want to believe those lies because they make us feel comfortable.
Yeah, and it's the superficial surface level of acting as a human being to keep the peace. But actually, when we go deeper, because when people act a certain way, if it's not particularly helpful, it's never about that situation. So classic example with the kids, if they're acting up around the table and arguing, it's not just because they want to argue. Yeah, sometimes it is. But it's about, something else has happened in their day, or they're just super tired. There's always a reason behind the reason behind the reason. There's always something, when people come to see me on a one-to-one basis, I'm sure you've experienced this, they'll say, I want to feel differently about eating, and I'm binge eating. It's never about, the chocolate they're eating. It's about generally how they feel about themselves and some trauma they might have experienced in the past. So it's understanding there's lots of deeper levels to it. And it's about how confident we are and the skills that we have to lean into those conversations to get to the truth, to then start unpeeling it, like that classic onion metaphor, isn't it? About getting down to the layers of actually what's going on, rather than treating the superficial stuff that goes on. Yeah, that's kind of like, just putting a Band-Aid on, a plaster. It's going to help for a little period of time, but at the end of the day, it's going to fall off. It's not a great plaster anyway, and it's not waterproof. It's it's there for a purpose, but it's not a long-term solution. And there are times in our teams when we're okay, but there are going to be times when they're not okay. And to have these skills to really explore what's going on will make sure that that pain doesn't last for too long and that you can thrive and experience joy at work. And this is what we do, isn't it? We've got a couple of solutions around, obviously sharing these skills with leaders and teams, but also having an online space digitally, regularly, for people to come and share what's going on in a safe space so we can help guide them as well. Especially if you're thinking, oh my God, I don't know where to start. How do I even start? It's a great way that we can actually take people through that process over a period of time, depending on what's going on.
There's all sorts of ways, aren't there? And it's key to what you're talking about there is making this just part of who you are, making it part of what you do, not just being honest when it matters, but being honest as often as you can, practicing it when it's kind of risk-free, practicing it when it's safe to practice it, and not, it's no different to anything else. And the analogy that springs to mind is we ignore, so the things we ignore, the honest truths we ignore physically, there comes a point where you can't ignore them physically. So, my legs hurting, my knees hurting, it's okay, it's okay. It's not okay, I've got to go see a physio. We, usually will take action before it gets that bad. And it's the same with these sort of things. Recognize, but actually you also want to do preemptive stuff. Actually, you know what? I need to keep my legs fit. I need to go for walks more often. I need not wait until my legs are really bad before I take action and do, I know we do these things, but we're generally better at doing it with the physical stuff. With stuff like this, the more mental, the more well-being stuff, where honesty is concerned, you got to practice it all the time. Practice in your team meeting, discussing what's, an open discussion, what's up, and just listening, not trying to, a really important part of honesty, or an expectation of honesty, is if I share something, I expect somebody to do something about it. Like you said about that I'm dead excited comment. Your expectation was not for me to change the post. Your intent was simply to help me. You saw something that you felt would help me. That was it. It was up to me whether I would take that. And there's something really powerful in that honesty. And you see this a lot. That's usually the bit behind brutal honesty. It's not brutal honesty. It's me telling you how I want you to behave, or how I think. And if you don't do it, there's something implied in if you don't follow this.
And there's going to be a really serious consequence.
And it's shifting away from that and saying, actually, you know what? I'm going to do this because I think it will help. If it doesn't help, fine, I'll do something else. And if it does help, I may never know. Going for a walk every day or doing yoga every day may stop some physical ailment that I'll experience later in life. I don't know that. I suspect it will prolong certain things, give me a better quality of life for longer than I would normally have had. Can't guarantee that, but I believe it will. But whether it will or not, I'll find out in time. So trust in your intent, not in the outcome.
Yeah, and I think in teams, when we come to modeling that behavior as well, it's about the teams and the people leaders rewarding that behavior. And, even when it's really uncomfortable, it's like, that person did make a mistake. But this is good because this is, part of what we are and who we are. We want everybody to say what's on their mind so that it can help them, obviously number one for their well-being, 2 for their team spirit, and 3 for, our KPIs and what we're doing here as a business, and to reward that in such a way that encourages other people to do the same, so that person doesn't feel like, oh my God, I've been completely, exposed. I'm never going to do that again. And I'm being ridiculed. It's about rewarding the behavior in that right way as well. So that then that builds into that kind of culture that you want to embrace and, thrive as a result of it. And, it's just being human, isn't it? In your leadership conversations, it's like I said before, it's just having those conversations. What's going on? How are you? What's really going on? I can see that something's not right. It's about bringing the human nature into your business conversations as well. Maybe just setting some time aside to have those kind of well-being conversations as well as separate to your meetings. There's so many different ways to think about what you would like, and then start doing that within your own business. And sometimes don't wait for permission. Just do it and see what happens.
Are you willing?
Otherwise we become stuck. We don't want to be stuck.
Are you willing and are you able? There is a third part. Are you allowed? But generally speaking, find that out after. If you're willing and able, do it. Find out if you're allowed afterwards.
Definitely.
Cool. Good spot to end on, I think.
Yeah. Very helpful, especially when it comes into kind of the other notes I made was helping people around working in a hybrid kind of remote way, because obviously that's kind of raised that honesty question, isn't it, about what people are actually doing at home. But again, you know, everybody, well, not everybody, because that's generalization, but most people I've spoken to who are still doing a mix of working from home or working from home all the time, they are doing more work. So the honest conversation is, are you allowing your employees to take the time off and making them feel okay about it? So I think that's more of a topic of conversation rather than are you trusting them to do enough work? Because at the end of the day, just working from home, they're not all of a sudden not going to be doing the work. The chances are they probably weren't doing it when they were in front of you in their office. So it's that deeper question, what were they doing beforehand? And how can you help them either perform better or feel better?
Am I doing the best for me? Am I doing the best for my team? Am I doing the best for my organization? Am I doing the best for the important people in my life?
Mm-hmm.
You know, not necessarily in that order, but if the answer to any of those is no, that's when you've got to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And say, okay, why not? And usually people will say no to the, am I doing the best for me? I'm working extra hours, I'm getting more work done, I'm not, the hybrid boundary between home and work is a bit blurred, but so, you know, but I've got to do it because I'm doing the best of my team or I'm doing the best of my family.
Yeah.
Okay. There will come a point where you won't be doing your best for them because you're not doing the best for you. And it's about that honesty internally. And then how do you share that with other people? Because, you know, a thread that comes through honesty quite often, one of the brilliant bits of honesty is you suddenly find support where you didn't realize you had there was support. Like you just said, there's when you're sharing things, there's almost a shared empathy of, oh, you're going through that as well. Oh, wow. But also people will help.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
and the right people will help at the right time.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then maybe it's time to do something different.
So lean into that truth. Start within yourself, but start sharing that truth with no expectation of it solving anything, but with the intent of helping somebody. That might be yourself, might be others, and be kind with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Lovely. Great stuff.
Have a good chat. Enjoyed that. I enjoy our Wednesdays. All right. I've got there's a couple of people that have shown some interest in coming and joining the chat, talking about teams and different concepts from different team perspectives. So hopefully next 2 or 3 weeks, there might be some other faces.
Yay.
So the huddle will grow. So yeah, we'll have a chat about that. And if anybody else is interested in joining these or any thoughts or comments, let us know.
Yeah, if there's any particular areas that you'd like us to discuss, anything that you're going through at the time, just give us a shout or we can talk through that with you. Yeah,
make it specific. Always cool to get specific.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a great day in the darkness. I can see rain clouds coming. I like a bit of rain. Hopefully, it might even snow.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Have a
good day. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.